guys want to get some coffee or something?
Can I get a cup of coffee? Black? Can't you see we talking? White?
Even little kids in Mexico drink coffee.
Well, I'm not a little kid in Mexico, okay?
That is the best coffee I've ever tasted.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
You want a cup of coffee?
No coffee.
Coffee drinker, huh?
Maybe we could grab some coffee?
Coffee! Coffee, 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 coffee!
How you doing, fellas?
Oh, shit. Okay.
That's not decaf, is it?
Viennese cinnamon.
Viennese cinnamon. Good morning, welcome to Wednesday. UFO Wednesday. It is a much better week than it was last week so far. Starting actually today, officially, Don Ecker is here. The one, the only Don Ecker. Look who joined us, my friend.
Hello.
John. Das Wolfe. Would you like to touch my monkey, Das Wolfe?
I don't know where that monkey's been.
You pretty much know where it's been. You know. That's all I got to say. But I want to say good morning to everybody in the chat. We've got Gap After Dark, the Gap previously known as Gap Stargate. We have, of course, Das Wolfe is on the show right now. Lord Thoth is here. Good morning, Lord Thoth. Penny is here. Penny's having a rough morning. She's babysitting. And I hope you're able to enjoy the show, even though you have to watch the young one. We've also got D. Bud Martin already here. And, of course, our good friend Monkey Jeebus is here. Monkey, I hope you're feeling better. He got spider bit. Live while we're on the show, Don.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a Mosker, does he?
No, he doesn't have a Mosker. And I'm betting some of you guys that missed that don't know what a Mosker is. We'll explain it. Matt DeMille is here. Good morning, Matt. Let's see. Anybody else? Oh, the lovely Sherry is here. Good morning, Sherry. Sox Bulletin is here. And, of course, my good friend Kyle Zacks. I don't know. Do Canadians believe in UFOs, Kyle? I don't know. I don't know about you guys. You're weird. Alatar is here. Good morning. And that looks like that's who's joined us in the chat so far. And hopefully we will see that grow because everybody is like slow getting up in the morning. And I know that. I'm not going to expect a quick show up for everybody. But I want to thank everybody for being here. And I want to thank Don for being here. Apparently, because some of you guys are aware that my phone got shut off last week, not because I didn't pay the bill, but because I separated from someone. We all know who it is. I'm not going to go into it. But a misunderstanding took place, and I am suddenly without phone. And without phone, it messes with the show. It messes with me. I have Skype on both my phone and my computer, but Skype is alien to me. So Don thought I ghosted him for the week, and I kept looking at Facebook. I didn't see anything on Facebook from you. And I'm like, oh shit, no, dude. I didn't ghost you. I'd never ghost you, Don. Except for the 10 years when I lost contact with you because, once again, my phone.
You got to learn how to improvise. You got to learn how to adapt.
You
got to learn how to overcome. Get your shit together.
And I did this week. I'm so grateful to have you in my life, Don. I really am. It's a blessing having you in my life. But John, I wanted to greet you and tell you welcome to the show again, because I've never really had you on the morning show, and this is a different show. So John, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
You're a college graduate now. You're not stupid anymore. How does that feel?
Well, I'm stupid enough that I've gone back. I've started my master's program this week. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, buddy. That's fantastic.
So,
Are you going to work for that PhD then?
I don't know. They don't have my degree program as a PhD, so I'd have to go to a different school.
Well, just be like your typical stupid kid and just go for something that'll never mean anything in life, like philosophy. Get a philosophy doctorate in philosophy.
I'm too old for that BS.
Oh, man. Good to see you, buddy. And, of course, Martin is here. Martin is, of course, managing our chat. He'll pop on every once in a while, but it's hard to tell because if his wife's working, he can't jump on the microphone. But Anima Confuse is here. Good morning, milady. And Dr. Dragon, a man whose name is the single best cartoon villain name ever, Dr. Dragon. It just sounds like a perfect villain.
Or a Bond villain.
I don't know. Dragon is too direct for Bond. Now, if he said it was Dr. Vagina, then it would be James Bond material. But Kingsport Callis here. Good morning, my friend. Scott Lewis, good morning. Oh, see, I told you, everybody start popping in. We'll start seeing people getting their coffee and joining the show. Let's see what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on. We've got Don Ecker here to talk about a couple of things that I found fascinating. Number one is his Disney story. And now I'm going to cut in and out. As you guys know, I've got internet problems. I'm going to be uploading more photos. And when I'm uploading photos, it fucks with my internet.
Everybody that has a Oscar, raise your hand.
A Oscar is the Disney Oscar. And I find it funny that they named it that, the Oscar. But I am going in there right now, done uploading files. So I will tell you when they're done. But you want to set this up, this story, what's going on and how it happened?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a great story. Back in the fall of 1994, my wife, Vicki, and I were publishing our magazine, UFO Magazine. Magazine started being published in 86, and it went actually all the way through our involvement to 2006. Then some other people ended up taking over the magazine, and within a couple of years, they ran it into the ground, and it was gone. Okay, but this is not about that. So I get a call at UFO Magazine office from the Disney publicity people in Orlando, Florida. And I got on the phone, and if I recall, it was this young woman who was talking to me and telling me that they had a new attraction coming to Orlando that they were building then, called the Extraterrestrial. Well, it's not a ride, but a new Disney, whatever the hell they call those things. So I said, well, what exactly are you looking for? So she told me they wanted to put on basically a 2-week UFO symposium. Now, back in those days, Gary, I was very active in the media. As a matter of fact, from about 91 through 97 or 98, it would have been hard to go a week without me being on some kind of television program, because I was doing them all in reference, of course, with UFO Magazine and UFO events that were happening then. A lot of things going on. So I had at that time, I was being represented by a woman by the name of Lynn Russo, who I met through my buddy Dwight Schultz, who was being represented by her also. You've got a picture of her there, Gary, if you want to flash that on the screen. This is a
Which
picture.
one is it?
It says Lynn Russo. It's on the set of Voyager. And she's standing between Robert Picardo and Dwight Schultz.
This one. There we go. Elvis and me. That one. Right?
No. Lynn Russo.
I'm looking at the photos. There it is. I found it. Yep. Okay. I'm making sure it's uploaded.
Now, this lady was really high-powered. She represented most of the Star Trek actors, Star Trek stars, in all kinds of things that they were doing, fan conventions, etc. Okay, and so I told this lady at Disney, you'll have to talk to my manager, and I put them in contact. So a few days later, I get a call from Lynn, and she said, well, basically, this is what they want you to do. And I said, okay. They want to have a 2-week event where you will host and bring in the top names in UFO research. Now, that's my wife and Ron Madden. The guy on the left there was the Disney honcho that I dealt with. He was the guy that gave me the Oscar in a dark hallway. Okay. That's another little part of the story. But the guy on the left. But that still wasn't Lynn Russo.
Okay, so I think it saved as the wrong thing, so I need to go back to your files.
Okay. So anyway, she said, now, they'll fly you down to Orlando. They'll put you and all the speakers up, room and board, and they'll basically...
It's that one.
Yeah. Now, Lynn, of course, is in the center. That's Robert Picardo on the left, Dwight Schultz on the right, and Lynn is in the middle. Can you blow that up a little bit?
Not here. They don't allow it. But what I can do is I can crop it. File save as open.
Okay.
I'll open it up and edit it so it'll look bigger. But go ahead. Continue, sir.
Okay. So I said, well, what is it they're offering? Okay. Other than that, she said, well, that's the thing. They're not offering to pay you anything except I think you should do it because if you do a good job for them, and I know you will, that they will be more than likely to hire you down the road for other things. So I told her, I said, well, I'm going to have to think about that. So I said, I'll get back to you. So I talked to my wife about it, and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, it's entirely up to you, but she said that would sure be some good exposure for the magazine. So I said, okay. So I started to gather together a list of names that would make a totally stellar event. Dr. Jesse Marcel, Jr., Jesse Marcel's son, the one that actually handled some of the debris from Roswell. Dr. Barry Taff, Kevin Randall, Zachariah Sitchin, George Knapp, Don Schmidt, at the time, Clifford Stone. I just had a 1994-95 who's who of all the UFO people that were basically doing some top-notch research and in the news. Now, here's the other thing.
Right.
94-95, there was an internet, but nothing in comparison to what we have today. It was back in that time frame pretty rudimentary. And a lot of guys in the UFO field might be using computers for emails, research, that type of thing, but it was not going online. Now, there was also a tremendous amount, and this was coming to me through the jungle drumbeat, intelligence interest in what was going on. I had broken 2 huge national stories on television, on NBC and CNN. One was the STS-48 video. We discussed that last time. And the Phobos 1 and Phobos 2.
Which we'll be talking more extensively later.
USSR. Yeah. Right. And those were big stories. But in hindsight, I totally believe they were suppressed. Now, there was no way to get the big word out on the internet because it, at that time, just was not capable. But intelligence people were really interested in what was going on, and they always have been. There had been some other indications of some of the machinations these guys were doing. You may be familiar with the Linda Moulton Howe story of a documentary she was going to bring to HBO. She was working on it back in the mid-'80s. And she was derailed by an AFOSI operation directed against her, led in part by named UFO disinformer Rick Doty. Do you recognize that name?
I know that name, yes.
Yeah, well, at the time, he was with AFOSI, and he was also in cahoots with Bill Moore, the guy that wrote the first book on Roswell, the Roswell incident, and a guy that was involved in the disinformation campaign against a civilian scientist that ended up mentally unhinging him and driving him into a mental hospital. That's a story for another time also. The guy's name was Paul Benowitz. So anyway, why would Disney have wanted to do this? Well, their stated reason was the new attraction that they were bringing to the table. Now, when I found out about it, and I was told that we, the group, would be able to go through this thing, okay, to experience it, I was excited about that. And that was one of the reasons that I agreed to take this job for no money up front. So all these people are contacted. We all get together, and Disney flew the first group and myself down to Orlando. Now we get down there, and of course it's a beautiful area. Florida in January. The weather was very nice at the time. The only real problem I had, now you may find this funny, but I was kind of freaked out by the alligators. Okay. Now,
well, you know my story with an alligator down there. Yeah, I fucking hated them.
Yeah. Well, there were gators running everywhere. Okay. And my family, my grandfather had a buddy of his that he had served with in India during World War II. Okay. My granddad was a combat engineer officer. When he came back, they had promoted him to major. He had been over there working on airfields, making airfields so they could go in and bomb the Japanese in Burma and some of those other places. And of course, the Japanese were trying to invade India. Now, this guy, my granddad's buddy, him and his wife moved down to St. Petersburg. And his wife, her nickname was Pinky, had two little dogs that she just absolutely doted over. And the house that they had was built right next to a canal. And one day, the little dogs are out in the backyard. A gator comes out of the canal, and this stuck with me as a kid, okay? Broke through the fence and tried to get her dogs. So, I mean, you know, gators, there was just something about gators that freaked me. But I thought, well, you know, what the hell? It's Disney. They'll have contingencies to take care of that if it's a problem. So we get down there and I'm looking around. It is gorgeous. We had a beautiful room. The food was good. In retrospect, they took really good care of us. So the first morning of the event, now we're in a big conference hall. Signs everywhere. Walt Disney presents blah, blah, blah. You know, the UFO
There's
symposium.
this one with Vicky.
Right.
Here. And then let me show, I've got 1 and 5 here to show some of the people on the panel.
Right. Now that's going from left to right. That's Russ Estes, who was a very good friend of mine, who was a television producer. My wife, next to my wife, Vicky, is Yvonne Smith, who was the director of the Close Encounters Research Organization. Then that's me next to Yvonne. And then next to me is George
I know that
Knapp.
face. Yeah, I knew
And
that.
then-
The George Knapp is so easy.
Yeah, Kevin Randall. And at the very end, Zachariah Sitchin. That was on
That's
that
Kevin
panel.
Randall?
Yeah.
Nice. You want me to show the other one too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Here we go. Panel 5. Boom. There it is.
Okay, now from right to left, that's Dr. Stanley McDaniel, Dr. Barry Taff, Bud Hopkins with his head turned, but you can tell by the silver hair. William Bromley, the guy that wrote The Gods of Eden, which was a very famous book. The next guy was, and got it, his name will come to me in a minute, but beside him is Don Schmidt, and at the very end, Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. So yeah, this was a pretty top-notch event. If I could have put something like this on under the auspices of UFO Magazine, we could have literally had 1,000 people or more attend these
Sold
events.
out. Yeah.
Sold out. So the first day we do our opening remarks, our lecture and everything, the auditorium, which could have held, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe even 600 people, was empty. Freaking empty. The only people there was a camera crew and a couple of guys sitting in the front row, and that was it. Okay, now this struck me as like, what the hell? And that happened the entire week. Nobody there. So I get really confused, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Now, Gerry, this could not have been cheap, okay? All those people, flying all those people in, tickets to leave, to go home, room, board, free passes to the entire park. It couldn't have been cheap, okay? We could go anywhere in the park and do anything we wanted, go into any attraction, any event, didn't matter. Totally gratis, free. But nobody was showing up to hear these guys talk. And I couldn't
That is
figure
so
it out.
fucking weird that they did that.
Well, yeah, but it gets better. So the second week, all right, same exact thing. So I start making some inquiries, and I found out that they had not done as much as $2.50 worth of promotion. Disney, the world's most, astute, on the money media people anywhere. This was a no-brainer. Okay? They didn't spend a nickel. So toward the end of the second week, we get notified that there is a TV crew coming in to videotape a special television show under the auspices of Disney. And of all people that begin this TV production, Michael Eisner, who was then the HMFIC of all of Disney. Okay? You know what HMFIC, okay, the guy in charge.
Yeah.
He brought his own crew in to film him for this TV production. Now, this was the other weird thing. Robert Ulrich was brought in to host this television production. Now, you may know him from back in the 80s and early 90s, big TV show, Spencer for Hire. As a matter of fact, that's where Avery Brooks, who became Captain Sisko on Deep Space Nine, really made his mark as Hawk. Okay? Spencer's
and I'm going to
buddy,
share, just in case, I want to show people who Michael Eisner is for a reminder. This fucking weenie cocksucker. I never liked this motherfucker. Just a terrible head of Disney for years. He's the one who stole Lion King, if you're curious. So let's get back to you.
He stole Lion King?
Yeah, he stole it from Kimba.
Japanese anime.
Anime called Kimba the White Lion.
Yeah.
And he fucked up in an email and said Kimba instead of Simba.
Well,
he got busted.
Anyway, so they do this production, this television production, and they interviewed quite a few people that I brought in. You know who they didn't even say hello to?
George Knapp.
Who?
Me, the guy that brought the whole thing together.
Fuck. Right. So there is
okay. Yeah, they did not. I was not interviewed. I was not spoken to by these guys at all. And I got to tell you, at the time, that kind of irritated me. And it wasn't necessarily my ego. Okay, although I'm sure
it's a professional slight. It is absolutely a professional slight. And I want to show the picture of you speaking at this event. There you are.
Yeah. So anyway, after this is all said and done, all right, now this was in January. It finally airs for the first time in toward the end of March on TV, okay, on commercial television. But this was weird because during the TV production, the entire gestalt was UFOs are not only real, they're here, they're extraterrestrial, and they're having interaction with human beings. Now, this came from Eisner. It came from Ulrich. Now, this show, when it aired, got no promotion whatsoever. The first time it aired, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody knew it was going to be on. Okay, they aired it a couple of times at odd times, and then they aired it after midnight with no promotion whatsoever. That made no sense to me either. This media-savvy company, Disney, what the hell would they have spent all that money for if they weren't going to show it? And the whole thing, the whole extraterrestrial thing in Aftersight was almost totally ignored. And by the way, I never got to see the attraction. Eisner canceled our access to it. claimed that it wasn't ready yet for the public and it wasn't scary enough for the public. Another weird oddity, okay?
That is so, yeah.
Now, I guess it was a Thursday or Friday evening on week number 2. We're having basically a farewell dinner, okay, in one of the big, really nice, gorgeous dining halls. And as we're eating, this kid, Disney kid, this drone, came running up to the table and he said, Mr. Ecker, he said, Mr. Madden would like to see you out in the hall. We have something we want to give you.
I'm going to show that picture again.
That's kind of odd. So I get up and I go out into a dark hall. Okay, nobody there except Madden. Okay,
crazy.
And this kid comes running down the hall, carrying a cardboard box. Okay, and Madden, the kid holds the box out to him like he's presenting the king with his crown. Madden reaches in, pulls this thing out, and he says, Don, I just want to tell you, we are so appreciative of the job you've done for Disney. We'd like to present you with what we like to call our Moscar, the Disney Oscar. So he hands it to me, and I got to tell you, Gerry, I kind of felt like we were in the shower and Madden just dropped soap. And he said, hey, Don, bend over and pick that up.
It is such a bizarre way of doing things.
I'm thinking, like, why in the hell didn't he bring this in and give it to me in front of my peers?
In front of everybody. Right. It's like, it's so fucking backroom shit that it's just like, what the fuck, dude? In a cardboard box.
Yeah. So, I thought about that for a long time, and finally the light went on. Okay. 1995, the internet, okay, is not what it is today. The spooks wanted to know, I'm convinced of this, they wanted to know what the leading edge research was doing with the whole UFO gestalt. And so somebody said, well, let's bring them all together somewhere where we can go in and hear them speak. And they went to Disney, who had been at the government's beck and call since World War II. Okay, Disney had done propaganda for them. Walt, all right, had done a lot of stuff for the military, and basically, even the Robertson panel. Do you know what that was? In the hindsight of the 1952 overflights of Washington, D.C. by UFOs, in January of 1953.
Can I insert something here? Because a lot of people, you've seen the newspaper headlines, and I was only aware of the one incident, but there were multiple. You taught me this. I'm like, holy shit. Please continue, sir.
So in January of 53, the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, convened a scientific panel where they brought in some of the leading lights in the scientific establishment to discuss this quote unquote UFO problem. Now, they met for a week. Now, most people would think, well, okay, the leading scientific guys, the CIA, intelligence gatherers, Well, it would only make sense if they want to know what are these things, where are they coming from, are they manned, so to speak, or are they what today we would call drones? Okay, are they drones? What are they doing here? Why are they showing an inordinate amount of interest over our United States atomic sites, which they were doing? And not only here, as we found out later in Russia and the Soviet Union. But no, that's not what they wanted to do. What they wanted to do was de-emphasize what UFOs are, to take away public interest, and among other people that they suggested using to do that, in other words, propaganda, were people like Arthur Godfrey, who at that time was a huge name in radio and television entertainment, and the Walt Disney Company. Now, later in the mid-50s, and that article that I gave you, Gary, talks about this briefly, okay? Disney's
and I did
involvement.
share the link in the chat for people to read it.
Right. For Disney was approached by the U.S. Air Force to do a special documentary on the UFO phenomenon, and the Air Force initially promised Disney that they would give them actual government footage of UFOs, and then at the very last minute they pulled it back, and the whole documentary idea was shelved. Now, some of the Disney people that were originally involved with that years later came out to talk about it. So there's been this this aberration of enticing and then pulling back the last minute actual UFO documentation from the government standpoint. Well, these guys, I am convinced, wanted to know. So somebody was prepared to spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get all of us people together to spill our guts in front of an empty auditorium so they could find out what was going on. What do you think of that?
Well, it
was intelligent.
Of course. You're also reminding me of the incident that involved the documentary with Rod Serling, because originally they were promised footage of that incident where contact was made between the military, government, and aliens. And last minute, they pulled it.
Right.
And this was constantly something that happened. I've read multiple times where people last minute, they'd pull it because, and I believe the CIA was part of this, because a lot of people don't know this, that the first major incident in the United States was in June of 1947 with Kenneth Arnold, and then right after it, within days, I think it was 2 days or 3 daes, was the incident at Roswell.
That was the Mount Rainier incident, right?
Mount Rainier was the first one with Kenneth Arnold, and they get, everybody focused on the saucer part. What they didn't pay attention to was he saw multiple vehicles flying over the mountain, and then Roswell takes place within days, and immediately
right around the 4th of July.
Yeah, and right around that time, immediately the Air Force broke from the U.S. Army, and the CIA was created.
Yes,
all in a very short period of time.
And the National Security Act was signed into law.
That's right. I mean, it's not coincidence. There's people, you got to remember, man, coincidence is something that rarely really happens. If something seems off, it probably is. And that was always something that seemed suspicious to me. And it was one of the things that I got from you, is that you absolutely stand behind the fact that these things happen in the order they happen for a fucking reason. And it was all to control. the whole thing. And then a Project Blue Book was created, and Project Blue Book was created for disinformation again. Sow doubt, and then when you sow doubt, you create the element of, there's nothing going on. If there was, the Air Force would say something, or the government would say something. But then you told me something I didn't know, which was that there was more than one incident over DC.
Oh, yeah. 3 weekends. 3, not 1, but 3. And there was a guy, he's dead now, by the name of Philip Klass, who was a senior editor with Aviation Week magazine, okay? And basically, they were doing a lot of investigative stuff on advanced avionics, spacecraft, satellite technology, all kinds of stuff. And Klass was one of the most vocal skeptics there was. You know, he came on the heels of a guy from Harvard.
I'm sharing a picture of him. There he is.
Right, Philip Klass, with his ever-present Marlboro cigarette, I believe. So Phil smoked like a like a chimney. But anyway, I got into it. I see the difference between me and the skeptical community. I would bring these guys on my radio show, and I was never an ambush interviewer. Okay. I always approached them from the front. I never tried to embarrass anybody. I didn't pull that kind of happy horse shit, okay? I was really upfront with the whole thing. And I knew Phil. As a matter of fact, in 1990, at the Pensacola MUFON Symposium, the Mutual UFO Network, okay, every year has an international symposium. 1990, it happened down in Pensacola. So on the Friday night meet and greet in a bar there, I'm down there. I see Phil sitting at a table. And I walked over and I sat down, and we knew each other. I mean, if we were talking about anything else besides UFOs, he and I got along great. And I guess it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Some of the people were getting a little lit. And this 250-pound Bubba came up to our table and got right into Phil's face. Guy was drunker than, well, he was drunk. Now, Phil was a little guy, okay? He was probably 5'4", 5'5". This guy was about 6'4" tall. He was drunk and he was angry, okay, at Klass. And I literally got up from the table and I knocked this guy back and I said, hey, now Klass at the time was in his 60s, okay? And like I said, 5'4", 5'5". And noticeably, he was sweating bullets. He thought this guy was going to jump him. So I pushed this guy back and I shamed him. And I said, you're not bothering this man. He's not doing anything. So the guy stumbles off, and I sat down and I looked at Klass and I started to grin. And I said, hey, Phil, you know, I just saved your ass, right? And he kind of looked at me. Well, yeah, the guy was drunk. And I said, I think you ought to buy me a drink, don't you? So I got a drink up. But in January of 1995, okay, this was either just before or just after the Disney conference. He's on my show. As a matter of fact, he had been on once, maybe twice before. And we're talking about the Washington, D.C. overflights that began around the weekend of July 18th or 19th, 1952. And where the skies above Washington were swarming with UFOs. Not only the Capitol, but the White House, over military bases. And at that time, okay, they had to bring jets in from Delaware. Now, the reason they couldn't fly them out of DC was because all the Air Force bases there were undergoing resurfacing on their runways, okay? They were basically reconditioning them. And I got that directly because I called the guy up and I talked to him. There was an Air Force Blue Book spokesman at that time by the name of Al Chop. And that's a very famous name, Gary, if you do a little research on him. And I talked to Chop, of course, before he passed away in the 90s. But I talked to Chop and I said, why did they have to bring in jets from Delaware? And then he told me, he said, all these fields were being resurfaced. I thought that was kind of weird, but okay, all right, if that's what you say. So we get into it, Class and I, on my radio show. And he said, well, now, if these things were real, Don, if they were real, Don, they would have had hundreds of interceptors in and around Washington. And I said, Phil, they couldn't. What do you mean they couldn't? And I told him, I said, all these fields were being resurfaced. So now remember, this is 1995. Public over-the-air radio, Phil starts screaming, bullshit! That's pure bullshit! And he had a habit sometimes of going off. As a matter of fact, he went off like that on Larry King Live when he was appearing with Travis Walton and Mike Rogers, okay, in the aftermath of the Walton abduction. He started screaming, God damn it, right on TV, which you didn't do back then. So I shamed him. I said, Phil, I can't believe you talk like that on my radio show. Fine, good night. And he hung up in mid-show.
It's one of those moments where you wish you had this, right?
Behave yourself!
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But
yeah, because you had told me about that story before, and it just fucking kills me that you triggered him twice.
yeah. Yeah, well, you see, that was the thing. A lot of these guys were never really oh, look at that.
Oh, somebody wants you. Somebody wants you.
Yeah.
Bill Collector, or is it someone wants to sell you
get rid of that. I got to get rid of that. But anyway, this was one of those incidents that, to me, proved beyond any doubt the fix is in about this. Always has been. Now, in the aftermath of the November 2004 incident with the Tic Tacs. Okay.
Oh yeah,
and the subsequent
F-14s.
Yeah, the subsequent fallout, the Navy giving their pilots carte blanche to talk about these incidents in public. Well, I got to tell you, that astounded me to no end. But I watched very closely, Gary, and do you know who still has not addressed this publicly to this date? Never said one word about any of it? The United States Air Force. They have stayed completely, totally mum. The people that are supposed to be protecting our skies above CONUS, the continental United States.
Right.
Now there's something really wrong with that. Something.
No, and I agree with you. They have been in that whole plausible deniability thing since 1947, starting with the following story after Army Air Force admits UFO, then immediately that photo shoot, and from that point forward, has been in a position of plausible deniability. Always.
Yeah,
and
every bit of it.
And it took the fucking Navy to be the only branch of military in, our Department of Defense to fucking say this shit's real. And we're getting buzzed by these things regularly. Yeah.
Do you know what the divide was between the Air Force and the Navy?
What is
Well, you were in the military. You know about service rivalry, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, big. I mean, the Army hates the Navy hates the Air Force hates the Marine Corps. I mean, it's just a merry-go-round. Everybody hates everybody else. Well, in 1952, the Secretary of the Navy was on some type of fact-finding mission, flew out from D.C. to Pearl Harbor. Now, let's not forget, 11 years before this guy flew out there, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and we were in the middle of World War II that fast, okay? Well, I guess they wanted to find out how the Navy was doing out there. It was still the anchorage for the fleet. This guy was out there on this fact-finding thing. Who knows what else? Maybe he wanted some fresh pineapple. I don't know. But coming back from Hawaii, he's flying into the U.S. And guess what? His airliner got buzzed by a UFO.
Jeez.
The freaking Secretary of the Navy, his aircraft gets buzzed. 1952. Well, he gets back to D.C. First thing he does when he gets to his office is call up his brother Secretary of the Air Force. And he tells him what happened. And he said, I'd like to come over and see what information you have on this phenomenon. What the hell are those things? You know what the Navy, what the Air Force Secretary told him?
What?
Told the Navy Secretary, and this started it. He said, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, but you don't have a need to know. Told him he didn't have a need to know. Well, you can imagine what the Navy Secretary did. I am sure, I would bet my bottom dollar that he called together his senior staff and they set into motion their own investigative team on this. Okay, now, there are few military organizations that have a finer. Oh, hang on a second. My wife is bringing me some coffee over here. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. All right.
Hi, Vicky.
Gerry says, hello, Vicky.
Hi, Gerry.
She says, hello. The Navy has an intelligence organization second to none. They are the people that were instrumental in breaking the MAGIC program, the Japanese Navy code, okay? They were instrumental in busting that. That's how we ended up winning battles like Midway, okay, the Battle of Midway, which changed the entire nature of World War II, okay? These guys were on top of their money. Well, this thing in 2004 happens. Now, God only knows why, but the Navy chose, at least in part, transparency. And I got to tell you, that astounded me to no end. Totally astounded me. But the Air Force is still staying mum. And I tried to get in touch with Luis Elizondo to ask him his thoughts on that. Unfortunately, he never got back to me. But he was somebody that, if in fact he did what he claims he did at the Pentagon, would have insight into. And to this day, neither he nor Chris Mellon the former Undersecretary of State for Intelligence Matters have addressed anything about that. And I would love to get their thoughts on the record.
That's fascinating, man. And by the way, my favorite joke about the branches in the competition is that, you know, there was this joke a drill sergeant told me many, many years ago that U.S. Army are dogs, doughboys, grunts, soldiers. Marines are grunts, leathernecks, jarheads, and the Navy are squids and swabbies, and the U.S. Air Force are called civilians in uniform.
That's right. Now I got a riddle for you. Okay? All right, here we go. If a blackbird has black babies and a bluebird has blue babies, what kind of bird has no babies?
I don't know.
A swallow.
Oh! Hey, Danny, I'm glad you dropped in, buddy. I know you're delivering the kid to school stuff, so you're not going to be here on time.
Yeah, my that
so no worries.
Is insane. Like, oh, and I have to.
Yeah, but you got to drive it in your new car, so
yes.
So there you go.
I have a feeling. I'll
say good morning to Don
3 or 4 times. Hey, good morning, Don.
Good morning.
Now I've introduced you before to Danny, right, Don?
Yeah, we.
It's possible.
I was. Yeah,
I think so.
Are you in Vegas, Danny?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he's
him.
the one that was making all the bunny ranch jokes.
Yes, the bunny ranch.
Yes, that was him. And
assuring me that the Metro Vice was as pure as the undriven snow, right?
They are so clean there. There's no corruption, none whatsoever. Hey, Darius Munchausen,
former sheriff is running for governor of this fine state. So,
and by the way, I did see Monkey Jeebus, your comments. Disney in Space was hosted by a former Nazi. And what did Matt say? Disney is such a military operation. I could tell you some stories. I got a feeling he probably worked for them. And I'm trying to see if there's anything, because somebody did have a question for you. Let me go into the start. I marked it. There it is. Monkey Jeebus. Has Don ever talked to David Paulides?
I interviewed him.
And there's your answer.
Yeah. I got a little story about Paulides.
Let's do it. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, Paulides wrote a number of books called 411, basically on missing people that happen primarily in national parks. Okay.
Yep.
And Paulides, ex-cop. I, of course, former police officer, criminal investigator. Got him on my show, fascinating show. And then I kind of lost touch with him for a while. I wanted to bring him back. And he contacts me on Facebook. He wanted to, he wanted to friend me. So I said, well, of course, sure. And I went ahead and I approved the friendship. Within 30 seconds, and I'm not exaggerating, 30 seconds, he puts a whole promo about all his books and his research up on my private Facebook wall. Now, there are some ways in which I'm rather formal, okay? I was offended that he would do that and not even ask me if I minded. So I immediately go up and I deleted everything. Then I got back to him and I said, look, if you want to put that stuff up, put it up on my Don Ecker and Dark Matters radio fan page. I have one on
Not
Facebook.
your personal one. That's right.
Not my personal one. Well, then he got offended and he deleted me as his friend. He didn't want to do that. So I figured, fuck you. Okay? And that's basically my my basic comeback.
That's your story.
I did try to call him to invite him back. And I had his phone number. I called his phone number. He answered it and immediately hung up. So I said, okay, fine with me. If that's the way you want to dance, that's it. So that's my story.
That sucks. You know, it really was. Because I promote our show on other people's groups, but I ask permission first. You should always ask permission. It's a professional courtesy.
Well, and a private Facebook page is one thing.
Your personal page is your personal page. Exactly. It's that was, and I like the 411 thing, but that's shitty, man. That's fucking shitty. It's too bad because I am fascinated by what he's doing.
Well, basically, and this is what he won't tell you.
Oh my God! Read that one. Read what Kyle just wrote.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Kyle.
So I had some conversations with him before this Facebook thing, and basically it all boils down to, and he won't say this publicly for whatever reason, but it's Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the Yeti. That's what he thinks is doing this.
And that's what I think it is. Yeah. Killing people that are in its territory.
Yeah. Yeah. And even people that were armed, okay, which I find curious.
The older gentleman, they were out hunting and there were people all around him and he just disappeared in the middle of the hunt.
Right. Right.
Crazy shit.
And weird stuff.
But we can mosey on over to Phobos 1 and 2 if you want to, because your knowledge on this one is the best at knowing what happened with this thing and what you've seen. Because a lot of people have forgotten about Phobos. Now, Phobos is the moon for Mars. And this is one of the things that's led to a lot of controversy, is that moons are normally not round. They become almost like planetoids. The moons around Jupiter are really fucking huge. They're like Earth-sized moons. And so them being round makes sense. But most moons that are smaller tend to be oblong or oddly shaped, like Phobos is. And it's in an elliptical orbit, as I recall. Not a circular, but elliptical, right?
It's in a retrograde orbit.
Retrograde orbit, that's it. And
which is very unusual.
Very. And so Russia sent 2 probes up. Well, initially just one, Phobos 1, which was just called Phobos, I think. And they sent it up.
They
did have a number on that one?
They were in a tandem. Now here's the thing that the large majority of the public, even to this day, have no information about. NASA, the National Aeronautics Space Administration, was working hand in glove with Globkosmos, okay, the Soviet space agency. Remember, there was still a Soviet Union then.
Right.
This was in July of 1988. NASA was a part of that team. Now, they launched Phobos 1, I believe it was in July. And a month, maybe month and a week or two after launch, they lost it. It disappeared. Now, at the time, the Russians said this was a combination of computer and human error. Oh, I can't believe this. This didn't happen before. Now it's not going to happen now. This was a combination of human computer error. Then they launched Phobos 2. Now, in January of 89, Phobos 2 got to Mars, and it went into orbit around Mars. Now, one of the primary aspects of this mission was to examine Phobos, the moon. And the reason the Russians and NASA were very interested in Phobos was because, well, to begin with, going all the way back to the 50s, there was a contingent of Soviet astronomers that believed the Phobos moon was artificial. Were you aware of that? Have you heard about that?
No.
Yes. They were thinking that it demonstrated that it was possibly hollow and artificial. Now, what I personally think is it's possible that someone put Phobos and Deimos, the other little moonlet, into orbit around Mars. But what the Russians wanted to do, they were in talks with NASA to send a joint Russian-American team of astronauts and cosmonauts to Mars. This is what they were talking about in the 80s, but behind the scenes. And they were thinking that if we can do this, because it's incredibly expensive, okay, to go to Mars, and if they shared the costs, it would be much more doable, all right? So they would collaborate on a ship, etc., and then send a team of American and Soviet astronauts and cosmonauts to Mars, use Phobos as where they would initially land on the moon, and then use the moon to go down to the surface of Mars. That was the tentative plan. Now, some of this I got through research. Some of this I got from Dr. Marina Popovich. I believe I mentioned Marina to you before.
Yes,
Marina Popovich was the Russian equivalent to Chuck Yeager. We all know who Chuck Yeager was, right?
Oh, yeah.
Chuck Yeager was the first American military man to break the sound barrier, okay, in his rocket plane, the Glamorous Glennis, Glamorous Glennis, I think it was, or Glamorous something. But he flew as fast as the speed of sound. Well, Marina had set over 100 Soviet aviation records. And she was a retired colonel in the Red Air Force. She had been married to General Pavel Popovich, who was the first astronaut or cosmonaut back in 1962 to rendezvous in space. Yes, with another Soviet craft. In other words, he outdid the Gemini operation by years, all right? But he ran off with his secretary. Marina was still pissed off about that.
I bet.
So we're talking, and to begin with, she is shocked that I know anything about any of this. And to give him full credit, I found out a number of these things through my friendship with Zacharias Sitchin. Sitchin had written a book that part of his Earth Chronicles series that came out around 88, 89, titled Genesis Revisited. And in this book, okay, this is years after the event happened, Phobos 2 had taken a number of photographs. One of them showed a huge ellipsoid shadow reflected off of the Martian atmosphere. This huge cigar-shaped shadow. Now, a lot of people say, atmosphere? Mars doesn't have an atmosphere. Well, actually it does. It's not one that we can breathe, but they have an atmosphere. Not only do they have an atmosphere, they also have horrible dust storms on Mars that sometimes will blot Mars out for weeks or even months at a time because of the strong winds blowing the crap around, the dirt, the dust. Well, then Phobos 2 took another photograph, and it was Phobos 2 was between Mars and Phobos when it snapped the picture of Phobos, and it showed a huge object in the background. Now, Gary, you may be able to find a representation of that on the web. Okay. I would have had a picture, but as with everything that was happening this past week, I didn't know if we were going to be doing the show today or not, and I didn't dig it out.
Yeah, and it's absolutely my fault. But they have something in the military. There's dust storms, and then there are sandstorms, and then there are haboobs. And a haboob is like, on Mars, is like miles, and they're gigantic. They would make the sandstorms in the Middle East that I've seen look like child's play. And this is what you're talking about, right? And I've got a picture right here. I'm going to go ahead and upload it real quick. Oh, no, it's not going to let me. God damn it. I'll just share it. Fuck it. I will share a picture. Because here in Russia, we share pictures. Soviet Russia loves America. We love big monies. Share screen. Let me get this picture here because I really do like this image. If you've ever seen a haboob, they're terrifying. These giant walls of it's like a sand cloud. And I'm assuming that this is what you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yep. Okay, there we go. So that's a haboob, representation of a haboob on Mars.
Then something happened that to this day still has no explanation. This object that Phobos 2 photographed turned toward the probe and started approaching. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this object, according to the spokesman at Glav Cosmos. This huge ellipsoid cigar-shaped object was 25 kilometers in length. 25 kilometers. And
here it is.
Width.
That's the object right there.
That's the photograph off of the Martian atmosphere, yes. This thing was 1.5 kilometers in diameter. Now, what's that in American? 15.5 miles long, a mile in diameter, and it's approaching the Phobos craft. Why? Well, on board that Russian probe was an extremely powerful laser. I'm talking about the kind that if they shoot it at you, it'll go through you like a knife through butter, okay? Which could be seen perhaps as an offensive weapon. The reason it was up there was they were going to use that to shoot a series of beams on Phobos, hitting the surface and then through the resultant gases, determine what the hell Phobos was made out of. Now, this craft, or whatever it was, I'm sure was aware of that, possibly saw that as a threat, and it rammed the Russian craft. It rammed it. Now, this isn't what I'm saying. This is what I was told by Glav Cosmos. It struck their spacecraft. And they said it turned it into a spinner, and then it was destroyed. So, that may have been Star Wars at work in reverse.
And there's what the laser was supposed to look like right there. I'll enlarge it a little bit. A representation of how the laser worked on Phobos too. So it turned and rammed it, perceiving it as a threat, is what it's assumed why it did that.
Right. Right. Now, I showed that photograph for the first time on Larry King Live in November 1991. Okay? And immediately the skeptics lit on that story in an attempt to basically suppress it. What they said was that object that Phobos photographed was nothing more than a computer glitch in the software that this craft was taking photos in. Basically, it was not really there. Well, that's pure crap. That's crap. It photographed what it photographed. But the other thing, when I was talking to my friend Zachariah Sitchin about this, because he had basically a lot of this detailed in his book, Genesis Revisited, Phobos had also extensively photographed the Martian surface. And in that series of basically orbits around Mars, it located a number of what Sitchin referred to as hotspots. In other words, it detected heat signatures on the surface of Mars, which made no sense. Mars is considered geologically dead, okay? Even though it has, as far as we know, one of the highest volcanic mountains in the entire solar system, there's nothing happening underground. But yet these hotspots popped up. So I asked Zachariah, I said, what do you think they are? He said, basically, he believed that they were reactivated extraterrestrial outposts or bases. So take that for whatever it's worth, Gerry.
No, I do. Now, something I did want to bring up again, because I think this is something that I think is really important to know. And Sean, just so you know, I tend to not talk about people's faith on the show. I think it's very personal, and I, I've never asked Don his faith. I don't think you and I've ever talked about faith. But you brought up something that involves faith, and it was something you shared that shocked me as to why the people in the Department of Defense don't seem to want to act on some of this stuff because of religious beliefs.
Yes. Yeah. There is a contingent of senior military officers within the Pentagon, at least this is as of a few years ago, who go by the collective name, the Collins Elite. And basically, they believe, or maybe they have reason to, that this UFO phenomenon is, are you ready for this? Demonic in origin. Demonic. from the devil. Okay. Now, I thought about that. These things I often will stew on for days. My wife will ask me, "Where the hell are you at?" I'm right here, honey. What are you doing? You haven't talked to me in an hour. Oh, I'm thinking. So, it's like that. And I thought about that. Well, when I first entered this field professionally, I was convinced at that time that we were talking strictly a nuts and bolts phenomenon. Okay? I was convinced that if these things are real, they're coming here from another star system and have been for a long time. Okay? A long time. Going back into human prehistory. But then over the years, my thinking evolved because I've been dealing with a lot of different things. And finally, I came to the conclusion it's likely that some of these may in fact be interdimensional, coming in from another universe. A lot of things caused me to go down that rabbit hole. Right. Skinwalker Ranch. Okay.
Absolutely.
Marley Woods. Absolutely. All right. I tried desperately back in the early 2000s to get permission to go out and spend a few days at Skinwalker Ranch. And I was denied by Robert Bigelow himself. So now I got to say, in hindsight, I'm not sorry about that. But at the time, believe me, I was very, very put off. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to dig into that. But I talked over the years to enough people, including George Knapp, about the goings-on out there. And Gerry, I'll never forget this. There had been stories that I was getting from a couple of people that spent some time out there, where in essence, whatever was happening out there followed these people to their homes. Almost like poltergeist phenomenon, okay? And so one day I was speaking to George, because George Knapp had spent a lot of time out there. And I've known George going back since the beginning of the Bob Lazar story in 88, 89. I've broken bread with George. George and I chased the night owl with a bottle of tequila together, okay? And so I know George, and I asked him, I said, George, you've been out there a hell of a lot. Did you ever have anything, quote unquote, follow you home? And Gerry, he got very quiet, maybe 15, 20, 25 seconds. And then he just looked at me and he said one word, yes. And he wouldn't go into it anymore. So, interdimensional. Yeah, it made sense to me. Now, these guys at the Collins Elite believe, at least from the people that I've spoken to that interacted with them, that these things are demonic. Now, that could be anything, but definitely not from here, from somewhere else. Another universe?
I'm telling you, that's, it's one of two things, because you and I talked about this before. I believe it to be they are either extraterrestrial or extradimensional in origin.
Why not both?
I do not believe. Well, that's just it. It could be both, but the fact is the one thing I've never thought it is time travel. That just never made sense to me.
No, but I'll give you a third option.
Okay.
Would you like a third option?
You betcha.
And maybe it could be all three. 12,500 years ago, in our past, which today we would call prehistory, something of an earth-changing apocalypse happened. Okay? Something changed the surface of this planet. Now, there were human beings there. Okay, there were Cro-Magnon. There were Clovis hunters in North America. You're familiar with the Clovis people, right?
Yes, yeah.
Clovis people got their name from a certain type of tool that they invented, actually a quite beautiful spear and or knife point from knapping flint and even obsidian, okay, that they used to hunt with. Beautiful point. You can pop it into your search engine, go up to its images, Clovis points, and you'll see all kinds of representation. Those people were using this.
Weren't they the ones who also created serrated edge blades?
I'm sure it's possible. I don't know that right offhand, but it was all stone. Okay, there was no metallurgists that were aware of then, but maybe there were. Okay, and that's what I'm getting at. 12,500 years ago, something happened. Now, North America at that time, where you and I are living right now, half of our continent was covered in ice, 1 mile to 2 miles deep, going down roughly midway through all of the United States. And
here's a representation.
At that time, we had major megafauna on this continent. And if you're not familiar with that term, huge animal life. Things like the Columbian mammoth, the great woolly mammoth, diurnal wolves, giant ground sloths, okay, camels, horses were running all over the plains, saber-toothed cats, smilodons. And right here in LA, down at the La Brea tar pits, they're pulling those things out all the time. And suddenly, in an eye blink, so to speak, something happened. The ice sheets immediately began melting, and I'm talking about fast melting, which ultimately caused the oceans to rise as much as 100, perhaps even more, 200 feet in depth. All right. Now, what would that do? It would wash out all the coastal areas, Gary. When people, especially primitive people, were setting up communities, what did they invariably set it up next to? Water.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Water. And along the coastlines, as a rule, the weather is much more clement than inclement. Okay. So if the ocean is rising 100 to 200 feet, you're talking about miles and miles and miles of coastland that just disappear. It's gone. And something wiped out in an instant these megafauna. Now, when I was a kid, okay, my father bought a huge pile of National Geographic magazines from a woman whose husband had died that had been subscribing to National Geographic going back to like 1901, 1902. And he brought all these home. And when I was a kid, and I'm talking about 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I used to love to go through those magazines because, for one thing, they had a lot of topless Native women pictures in there. Okay, I gotta say, I was amused by that. But I came across an article sometime in the 1930s where some hunters in Siberia found what turned out to be a huge, humongous, gigantic boneyard, like a junkyard filled with bones, that turned out to be herds of woolly mammoths that had been, according to the article, picked up by the wind and literally torn apart. And they estimated the winds had to be 1,000 miles an hour or more. Now, what the hell would have caused that? Well, it's my personal belief that around 12,500 years ago, an object from space came down, probably in North America, hitting, at least in part, the ice sheets. Another impact crater has recently been discovered in Greenland that is over 100 miles wide. Okay, so maybe it was an asteroid that broke up, but something hit the Earth, and when it did, we had these catastrophic events. And basically, within 1,000 years, we encountered what's called the Younger Dryas period, okay, where the climate had changed drastically. Now, in the aftermath of that, what else happened? Well, in the last 15, 20 years, Göbekli Tepe has been discovered. Göbekli Tepe, which goes back to around 11,000 something BC. And there are other sites, megalithic sites, that have also been recently discovered. I had...
And I want to share the one in particular. And I would like to get your thoughts on what this is. Because this is the one that was believed to be the life ender here on Earth for dinosaurs that hit in the Gulf of Mexico.
Chicxulub, yeah, the Chicxulub crater.
Yeah, and this is an image of it. I'll enlarge it a little bit for you guys so you can see it better there. There it is. And
that's an ocean.
And what you're talking about, that is, you were describing that. And you think that that wasn't accidental?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but I'm not talking about Chicxulub. Chicxulub happened 65, 66 million years ago.
So you're talking much later during the,
I'm talking about a smaller object that still had basically the same, aftermath. Something... The one in Chicxulub is believed to have been a mountain somewhere in the vicinity of 6 to 11 miles in length that hit.
Is there a name to the one that you're talking about? What's it called?
Well, it hasn't been officially recognized yet. But what I'm saying, they have discovered a crater in Greenland, okay, in the last number of years. And I believe that parts of that object, it broke up, hit North America in the ice fields. Now, scientists have discovered in the last 25, 30 years, micro diamonds embedded in the dirt that comes only from a huge impact. Pulverizing the rock. Okay. These are only created, these micro diamonds, infinitesimally small, but numerous. okay, by an impact. It's believed that an impact, in fact, is what knocked out the megafauna. And God only knows how many human beings died as a result of this. Not only the impact, but then the rising floodwaters. And it changed the climate worldwide. Okay, this event changed the climate. Do you know, for example, the Sahara Desert used to be a vast, huge, lush grassland area, okay, where people were conducting agriculture, raising cattle. I mean, it was a lush paradise. And suddenly, now what is it? It's thousands of miles of empty sand. Okay. God only knows what's under the Sahara. This may have been a part of this event that I'm talking about. But the entire climate change. Now, Göbekli Tepe began somewhere around 11,000 BC. It's considered a temple site. Okay. And some of the statuary that they have carved, basically rock, that they've uncovered show what appears to be a comet or something coming down from the sky. They basically were commemorating that event. Now, I started to tell you, I had a archaeologist that I interviewed a few years ago, a young woman who basically calls herself a rogue archaeologist. She's credentialed, has the degrees, but we were discussing Göbekli Tepe, and I referred to the people coming through there as refugees, and she most strongly agreed. But refugees from where? Well, from advanced civilizations that were around then. Now, I said a third option of what these UFOs could be. And this is a theory, okay? I have really nothing at this point that I can use to substantiate it, but I've done a hell of a lot of thinking about it. And when I say advanced, I really don't know how advanced, okay? But it's possible that there is a lost civilization that saw these catastrophic events approaching Earth and basically left Earth until it was all said and done, over with, and then came back and for whatever reason decided to stay incommunicado, okay, from everybody else. And some people believe the USO phenomenon, unidentified submersible objects in the ocean, Gerry, in fact, might be part of their civilization. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes, I do.
Now, does Don Ecker think that that's the story? No way I can say. I can say that it's, in my mind, a viable possibility.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm right in there with you on that. I mean, what happened in the Sahara Desert, because I remember my first year of college learning about that the Sahara used to be a lush grassland with forestry and everything, and it just became a sheet of glass in a lot of ways, just sand. And the way things happened on this planet, and because I brought it up with you too, how FOXP2 protein became only dominant in human beings. And of course, FOXP2 protein is not terrestrial in nature. It ended up in the diets of most primates, if not all primates, and because we all had the same diets. And yet we, Homo sapiens sapien, developed speech from the FOXP2 protein. We have more than any other animal on the planet. That's
our ancestors, our brains physically in size almost doubled in size in size inside our heads, and geologically speaking, an eye blink. Now, there are many scientists that will suggest that that happened because our early hominid ancestors began eating meat. Okay? Began a diet consisting of, among other things, meat. Now, which brings up another thing. Do you know the roots of the word vegan?
No, I do not.
Well, it's actually from early Amerindian, or basically an ancient Indian word, vegan, meaning piss poor hunter. So
I was not ready for that.
So, it's something to think about. But no, a diet of meat is believed, at least that's what they're attributing. Now, that's not what Sitchin believes. Sitchin believes, or believed, in his Earth Chronicle, going back roughly 430,000 years ago, we had our first, oh, damn it. I should have turned that damn thing off, Gary. Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it, buddy. Don't worry about it.
430,000 years ago, we were first visited by extraterrestrials. And they came to this planet looking for rare earth minerals and metals. And one of the primary objects they were looking for were gold. Okay? Now, you know that in South Africa, gold mines have been discovered that have dated back over 300,000 years. Were you aware of that?
No.
Yes. Now, gold in itself, granted, is a very pretty metal. Anybody that wears jewelry probably has something with gold in it. But when it comes to a metal that we can use for tools, it's useless. All right? You can't make a spear point out of it, or you can't make a knife blade. Well, you can, but it's going to bend. It's going to be ruined probably the first time you try to use it. So what the hell would somebody 300,000 years ago want with gold? Well, gold does make a wonderful addition to electronics, for example. Okay. Among other things, technologically. So, at any rate, 300,000 years ago. Now, these beings, according to Sitchin, came because these beings were undergoing major climatic catastrophes. At least this is what Sitchin theorized, and they wanted the gold to help deal with that. So they began mining it. But the mining was too damn hard for them, so they decided to design workers that could do it for them. Basically, a slave labor race. And they took early proto-humans, they mixed, and this is a short, dirty version, they mixed their DNA with these proto-humans, creating what we today recognize as our race, Homo sapiens sapien, and they used these beings for their slave labor. And I mean, the whole Sitchin theory is incredibly long, very complex. He did a masterful job in his series of books detailing and proving his theories and theorems. So there's a possibility of the fact that we basically, sounds like bad sci-fi, but we had for quite a long time alien overlords.
And that's, if you watch Ancient Alien series, there's a lot of reference to that, even though they don't talk about it directly. And I find that interesting.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people would freak out. You mentioned earlier the question of faith. What would the actual knowledge of something like that do basically to the people of faith around the globe? Now, I'll tell you what the official come down on that was. Back in the early 90s, I had been contacted by a guy who was working, and this is a long story in itself, but had been looking for a document that he had heard about that basically was a document prepared for the then brand new NASA back in the late 50s, early 60s. Now, little short side trip. At that period of time, after 1957, the West, as opposed to the Russians, were in panic by what they perceived as a missile gap between us and the Russians. 1957, the Russians put the first artificial satellite in orbit, Sputnik, okay? We couldn't do that. Our rockets, for the most part, kept blowing up on the pad, okay? There was terror there. Well, Eisenhower took all the rocket programs away from the Navy, the Air Force. I mean, all the services were doing their own rocket program. And he put them under the tent of this new bureaucracy, NASA. Okay? Now, NASA, they're sitting in a rented office around a big table. What do we do now? Okay. So they went and contracted for an official report to basically detail the whole idea of space exploration, extraterrestrials, what happens if and when we meet ET or artifacts that ET left behind. Because even then, they knew it was very likely that planet Earth had been visited. Well, I found that document and I gave it to the guy, and it was very telling. In it, it said that not if, but when we discovered extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial artifacts in the next 20 years. Now, this is early 60s. So what are they talking about? Early 80s, right? They fully expected to find proof of ET, and I'm sure they already did in some quarters, knew that ET was here or something was here. But what do? Well, this report came down this way. If, in fact, we reveal this, okay, two groups of people in our society are going to be adversely affected. In other words, they're going to have the shit scared out of them. And who are those two groups of people? Scientists and engineers, and they're going to find out how primitive they really are, and people of faith, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhism, these people will be, and the word they used, electrified. And they were absolutely fearful of societal breakdown as a result of this. So what do? Do we make this information open and available, or do we hide it? Well, I think we saw what they decided upon, Gerry. They decided to hide this. But how long can they keep it hidden? Well, they haven't done very well, because we're talking about it right now. Hell, the Navy, has allowed their people to talk about it. So is disclosure coming? Possibly. But if it is, why might this have also been hidden? And this, I got to tell you, is something I don't and haven't talked about much. But over the decades, there have been reports of several recovered extraterrestrial craft that we recovered. And if this stuff is so advanced, why would it crash? It's unlikely that our militaries, unless we surprised and ambushed them, would be able to bring one of these things down. But something else has been, and hey, I'm going to tell you right now, most researchers will not address this, what I'm about to tell you. But there's been more than a little bit of evidence that there are several groups of extraterrestrial visitors coming here that are in conflict with each other. Conflict.
Okay.
All right. As a matter of fact, one researcher who used to live was a Russian or a Soviet citizen, guy that I've known for a long time. His family was Jewish. They were able to get the hell out of there before the collapse of the Soviet Union. He moved to Europe, then South Africa. Finally, over here was a newspaper guy, that got a bug up his rear end about the UFO phenomenon and made contact and friends with some of the leading researchers in the former USSR, and reports began flowing in from people in the Siberia region that have absolutely observed sky battles taking place in the skies above Siberia. Now think about that. And if that is true, I'm sure our military and intelligence people would be aware of it. And what the hell would they be thinking about that if it got out?
Yeah, the implications, man. That's all I got to say. Is it's because I've talked to you about what I believe, because as I'm technically an agnostic, but I do believe that things that we have in the different books from different religions point towards things that we perceive as gods, but maybe are something else.
The wars of gods and men.
Yes. And I've always been fascinated by this. I thank my father for it. And I'm so grateful that we have someone like you out there that, and having access to you is just such a gift. Because this is absolutely my favorite day of the week. UFO Wednesday. And oh wait, what's this? I have faith, and in the Bible it says that humans are not alone. Well, yeah, in Genesis it mentions there were giants that roamed the earth. It talks about a lot of different things that really point towards something, angels I've always perceived as not terrestrial in nature, clearly. And it's
Well,
fascinating.
we can go into that whole area on some other occasion.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. Because this is a
yes.
whole new can of worms, and I want to dig deep into this and listen to you because you're giving a lecture. Is what
Everybody
you're
that
doing.
has the monster, raise your hand.
Also, anybody who is a disabled veteran law enforcement officer with a missing leg, raise your hand or the leg. Yeah, fuck you, Gerry. I'm so grateful that you're here. And here we are. We're at the end of the show. You really did lead us into a great ending. I think that we, because I was telling someone in private that I think the government watches us when you're on.
Oh, you bet they do.
And we had a huge audience, and then it dropped all of a sudden to what it is now. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? And that's what led to my communication with somebody else. Is like, I think we got ganked by somebody.
Or it could just have to do with the fact that I showed up and everybody left.
Yeah, nobody likes you, Danny. I don't know why you know, anyway. No, we all love you, buddy. No, I think there's something weird about that. And I was talking with Anima Confusa privately that I know that you are surveilled still. And I'm just like, this is interesting. Why did it suddenly go from hundreds to down to 10? Just dropped drastically. And I'm not sure if YouTube had something to do with that or what. I don't know. But I don't care because people are still going to watch this episode. We're still going, and it'll still be on YouTube. So I'm certain that people are going to watch this episode and find everything.
It will be on YouTube.
Yeah, if I get ganked, I know why. I'm like, damn you, Don! Or as Kirk would say, Don! Anyway. But great. Cobra Khan is here. This is a new person, 007. Numbers accurate. Yeah, I know. I'm very suspicious of what's going on. Thanks for dropping in, Cobra. I'm going to do my thank yous now to everybody. I will thank the chat. So I got to go into the private chat because my good friend Martin keeps a list. So I want to thank D. Bud Martin, Gap After Dark, the Gap formerly known as Stargate, Lord Thoth, Monkey Jeebus, one of my two favorite monkeys, Penny, Danny's mom, that's Dorknet's mom, Matt DeMille, the lovely Sherry, Socks Bulletins, Zax, a.k.a. Cal, Alatar, Dr. Dragon, Kingsport Cal, Scott Lewis, Glenn Fleming. Let's see. Decepticons Cave of Villains. I didn't even see them. Sean Wilson is a new viewer. Welcome to the show. Devoutly faithful. He's talked about it in the chat. Darius Munchausen, my favorite form of Munchausen. Mr. Tickle Trunk. I was glad he could drop in. He is our good Canadian friend and a huge supporter of the show financially. Kylock is a good friend of us, and I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Kylock. Dragon Ruse, and of course, Cobra Khan is a new viewer. So glad to have you. Thanks for posting in the chat. There was a question. I wanted to see what it was. What was it? There was a question, I think, for you, Don, from Sean Wilson. Does NASA have an omni-wheel patent?
I don't know. I couldn't say. But I can tell you this I do know, that today I did this show wearing my pajamas.
I fucking love you, Don. You are the king of awesome. Don confirms my theories on what those things are. I'm not sure what that is. They're just another life form, an animal, regardless of where it's from. Oh, okay. So that's what you said previously. Gotcha, Monkey. But I'm going to wrap this show up, and with the promise of, man, Don, you're an incredible person to have on the show. I don't even want to call you a guest because you're a friend, and you teach so much information. And I am shocked not to ever see you involved with History Channel shows. Have they never reached out to you?
No.
That's got to change. You
Here's the thing, Gary. Here's the thing, and I'll just be real upfront about it. I've got a reputation of being a real hard ass, no bullshit guy. Okay,
but that's what's great about you.
I've told TV producers that they're full of shit, and you don't get gigs when you tell these guys they're full of shit. Okay, it's like 25 years ago, I had a bit of information, and I've always been a nut about lunar phenomena. I've followed that. I've chased it for over 20 years. Okay. I am convinced on the far side of the moon, there is either the remnants of a former ET base, or it's likely it's still in operation. Now, the moon has everything you need. Okay. If you have the technology, you can go up there, you can live. It's got water, water on the moon in the form of ice, okay, probably from cometary strikes and other things. But yeah, it's got all the necessary ingredients if you can use them with your technology. So it would make sense. People have been seeing things in the sky since there have been people. Now, why in the hell would they still be coming here unless they had an agenda? And they would have to have a place. They wouldn't be coming, if they're coming from another star, they wouldn't be coming and leaving to go back to the star. That would make no logistical sense. They would have to have bases here. And I am sure they do. They have bases here on Earth. I think some of them are under the sea, and they have bases in other places, I'm convinced, of the moon. And they may not all be from the same origin. But the bottom line is, yeah, they are here, and they do have an agenda, and the majority of us have no clue what that agenda is. But are they coming back? Well, I think the dirty secret is they never left.
Yeah, I don't think they ever left. That's why we have so much art depicting so many different things.
But anyway, to get back to what I was saying, I've got a bad attitude about stupidity. All right, I can be pretty hard-edged when it comes to that, and when somebody is trying to tell me something that I've spent most of my last 30 years of my life working on, going into majority of people on the television, these ancient alien guys, for example, they don't have a clue about what the real story is. Not only do they not have a clue, they're not interested. What are they interested in? You're in media. They're interested in ratings. The crazier it is, the more provocative it is, the better they like it. And they don't give one rat's ass whether it's real or not. And the thing, when I've been on TV, I've always straight and varnished truth as I see it. Okay?
Right.
And those guys don't like that. So, have they reached out to me? Nope, not a bit.
I think they're afraid of you. What are your thoughts on Giorgio Tsoukalos?
Oh man, I love his hair.
Crazy fucking hair, dude. Crazy fucking hair. He's got some of the best UFO memes going out there. I'm not saying they're aliens, but aliens.
Yeah. Well, he's fast buddies with Von Daniken.
Yeah,
okay.
Eric Von Daniken. Yep.
And Eric came when I was in Vienna, Austria, back in 90. What the hell year was it? 93. Vicky and I were invited to be speakers at the first World UFO Congress. And I was talking about some of my research then involving military encounters, military, not civilian, and lunar stuff. So Von Daniken came down to hear me. Then he came up, introduced himself, and we went out and had several cups of the best freaking coffee I ever had in my life. Vienna. Oh my God, they have coffee to die for over there. So I just thought I'd throw that in because you like your coffee so much.
I love my coffee, man. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here. I do want to thank, we got a new one, Jack of All Casuals, who was not in the chat but was watching the whole show. Good to see you, Jack of All Casuals. Thanks for dropping in. And thank all you guys for being here. I do this show because of the chat. You guys are awesome. And I'm glad you guys stick around and watch and see our numbers are going up again. YouTube is fucking weird. But I'm going to continue a conversation with Don after the show. Any members that want to join us, it is in the DM on Twitter for the group. So if you want to drop in and say hi to Don, you are welcome to. And I want to get more into these photos again because I love the fact that you're friends with Dwight Schultz. I fucking love Dwight Schultz. But that you and I both met Jimmy Doohan is something amazing because I love that guy.
Yeah, that was at Disney there.
That was at the Disney shows. And what was the significance of this photo?
Well,
was it because of her?
Dwight was doing Dwight. Well, she was my manager. As a matter of fact, she ended up living with Vicky and I for a couple of years. That's another story in itself. But Dwight was doing an episode of Voyager where he was Barclay, Lieutenant Barclay, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, if you want to, come on over, and you can watch them shoot." So Lynn and Vicky and I jumped in our car, shot over there, and got to see the magic behind the curtains. So there you go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Don. God damn it. I love these episodes with you because you're just so fucking amazing to listen to. And you absolutely have one of the best speaking voices. You really do. You really get people's attention. I like that about you. You've got that East Coast accent that I like. But more so, you've got just this fucking a huge amount of knowledge on a subject.
Hey, I was thinking about you before we sign off. I gotta tell everybody this. I wondered what would happen if Dr. Stephen Strange was not a Marvel character, but was real, and he took the word fuck out of language. And I thought to myself, what the hell would Gerry do?
I'd be screwed. So that's what I did there? I switched it out. All right, guys. See you. Well, I won't be here tomorrow morning, but I will see you Friday morning. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm not sure if we're going to have a show. I don't think we will for tomorrow. But I've got doctor's appointments and shit. So everybody have a great and wonderful day. Thanks for watching. And this is our sign off. So as we old men like to say, get off our lawns.